that night they only get funding for 100. Those 100 beds will stay empty. And you will see outside the Hope Mission people laying on the street, drunk, drugged out and stuff, because the Christian charity that Hope Mission says they have, because they didn't get the money, will have the people sleep on the streets, is my understanding what goes on up there. And what's going to happen here will be the same thing, and instead of our people sleeping under trees, they'll be sleeping on cold sidewalks. Again, I'm going to copy what Debbie had to say, is why is the city pushing this so hard when there's so many people, and it's very clear that the city of Wetaskiwin does not want it. We're not saying we've always had a homeless shelter, but we certainly do not need one of the magnitude that this is going to be. And my understanding, it's actually closer to 26,000 square feet rather than 17,000. And when I spoke last time, I had mentioned that because we were all led to believe that the land had already been transferred. Well, when I spoke in October, the land had not been transferred. It was still in the city's name. And within 2 weeks after me bringing that to head, the papers were signed to transfer the property to Mission. There's talk about lawsuits and stuff. I'm not sure what lawsuits could come from Hope Mission. It's just like anybody else that puts in for a building permit. There's a lot of things you have to do. And I see you run the chance of getting your application turned down. So I don't understand. All I can see is they ended up with a free piece of property. So I'm asking again, as Debbie did, why you're pushing for it. What's the agenda for it? The people are speaking out, they're crying out by the number of signatures and by the amount of people we had come to our meeting, that we don't want it. They talk about compassion. I had somebody write my main office of Canada about me because I had a petition in my office. And they said, have compassion for these people. I have compassion for these people, absolutely. But you also have to have compassion for the people that I know of that have been beaten up, stabbed, robbed, and property damage, vandalism. Where's the compassion for those people? All I hear is about these 20, 30, 40 people. What about the thousands that are speaking out now? So please, if there's any way, give us a chance to vote on it. Have a referendum. Let us vote. Let's see what the city has to say. And that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Eileen Reppenhagen.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. This is the first time I've ever done this, but I'm not afraid of speaking. I'm a fairly new resident. I've been here about a year and a bit, and I'm neighbors with Karen. So we moved in, and I really didn't hear anything about this. I sort of glanced at the newspapers and didn't really see that this was a huge issue in the community until about 2 weeks ago. I'm an accountant. I was in public practice in BC for 35 years. I also volunteered for the emergency social services in Delta during the flooding in 2006 and various fires, and have emergency management training from the Justice Institute. I met with Mr. Rowe, and we looked at the plans, and he showed me a plan for 17,000 square feet. And then he sent me later a plan that showed a significantly larger facility, 26,000 square feet. And I asked him, does that mean the budget went up? Because you've got $9 million allocated for this project. And he said, well, not really. We're just like adding a couple of extra little features. But to me, 26,000 versus 17,000 is a lot bigger property. And exponentially, I did a quick calculation, and that would mean it's a $13 million project, not a $9 million project. And in the course of my thinking about this situation, I came across a rule change by CRA that you may not be aware of. The accumulation of property. January 2023, a registered charity could have requested an approval to exclude accumulated property from its disbursement quota calculation. This allows a charity to set aside significant funds to specific qualifying activities without incurring divestment obligation during the accumulation period. What that means in plain English is that charities have an obligation to spend the money that they have. And the reason the previous two speakers spoke about why is it you're being pressured to proceed with this so quickly, it's because the rules changed and you can no longer apply for a disbursement quota exception. And Hope Mission has a problem. They have too much money. So they are under a time pressure to spend that money or allocate that money for this project by the end of this year, because they can no longer exclude it and say, well, we've got this money set aside for this project, because that exclusion has gone away. So you may not be aware that CRA has changed the rules, and the reason that you're getting a lot of pressure from Hope Mission for a commitment is because of the change in the rules. So I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here, but it just like stuck out for me that there's a reason behind why they need to spend this money fast. And the reason is that they are under an obligation to spend the money that they have sitting in the bank, or else they lose their charitable status. That's the result of them not spending the money. So aside from all the social situation that's going on, the justice situation, it's all about the money. And there's a time pressure here that if you don't commit by December, end of December, they've got a problem. They have to find a way to spend this money that's sitting in their accounts. So if you're feeling pressure from Hope Mission to complete this process by the end of the year, that's why. You may not have known that. Thank you.
Dale Unland.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Council, admin, and guests. Most of you around this table have been close acquaintances, if not friends of mine, over the years, and know a lot about me and my family. What many of you also know is that our son, Curtis, and many of you also know him well, had issues with addiction in his late 20s and early 30s. Before he was able to deal with the addictions, he had to hit the bottom, which he did. It was one of the hardest times in our family's life, but fortunately, we had the wherewithal to get him the help. But he had to admit that he needed help, and he did. This help came from an organization called Edgewood Treatment and Recovery Center, located on the outskirts of Nanaimo, BC. This is a private, non-Christian-based center